All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. We are going to get started today. So, thank you for joining this evening for our 3-day reset challenge. Today is day 1. And it doesn't matter if you're catching this live or if you're going to have to catch the replay. We are super excited, or I am super excited to have you here with me this evening. And so I'll just jump right in because I know it's the evening time and we've all got a lot of things to do. But I like to start each of my reset challenges by reminding all of my resetters that this challenge is not about fixing your entire life in 3 days. If I had that secret formula, I'd probably be rich. At any rate, it is, though, about giving yourself permission to slow down, take a breath, and say, what do I really need right now? What should I be focusing on? You've already done something very powerful by showing up today, so give yourself a hand for that. And that lets me know, though, that you're ready for something more. And so I always like to remind all of my resetters that it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your season in life, or even how long you felt stuck. You can hit the reset button at any given time. And sometimes we get so used to being in survival mode that we forget what it feels like to actually live and be intentional. So today we're going to start by asking ourselves some of the tough questions, like what am I carrying that no longer serves me? What have I accepted as normal that's actually been holding me down or weighing me down? And those are kind of tough questions when you think about it, especially when you are kind of going through the motions each day. And so I apologize, having a few technical issues, bear with me. All right, so today is going to be all about getting real with ourselves so that we can move forward. That's really what our life audit worksheet is all about. For those of you who may be catching this video, you may have just seen me go live and jumped on and have not officially joined my 3-day reset. Guess what? It's not too late for you. You can still join and get access to all of the content, worksheets, and guided prompts. But resetting is really all about identifying where you are and where you want to be and building a path to get there. It doesn't mean we're going to throw everything out, but it does mean that we're going to create enough space so that you can hear your own inner voice again. And I think about women, we often carry so much. We are expected to be strong, nurturing, at the same time trying to balance success because we want success in life. We're self-sacrificing, and you're trying to be all of those things all at once. And sometimes we often suffer or feel burnt out, but we're doing it in silence. And we think by not saying anything about it that we're being strong. But that's really not strength. Really, when you think about it, taking a moment to recognize that you're not where you want to be and that you want to take a moment to reset, that doesn't mean that you're weak. That's where you're actually exhibiting your strength, because change takes strength. It's not easy to change. But it does mean you're going to be intentional about how you want to move forward. So let's talk a little bit about the life audit. The life audit worksheet is really where everything begins in our reset community. It helps you to get really clear because clarity is important if you want to make change. You need to know where you are and what you want to change. And so it's really designed to help you check in with yourself. Say, where am I really at? How satisfied am I with where I am in my career or my business, in my relationships, in my finances, in my health, all of those areas. And what you really are going to realize is that often what shows up here in this life audit is the things that you don't really speak out loud to anyone. It's kind of those unspoken, hidden truths about where we are, because we like to appear like I've got it all together. I've got it all figured out. But that's not always where we are in life, and that's okay. You know, we tell ourselves things like, I have to keep it all together because no one else will. Or how can I lead in the boardroom if I can't lead at home? You know, like if I'm struggling in my home life, how can I really go to work and show up? So sometimes we get in these spaces and we just feel stuck. And so keep in mind, this audit isn't to place judgment. It's not one of those things for you to look at it and say, oh my gosh, everything is great. I don't need any help. It's also not meant for you to say, oh my goodness, everything is wrong and I need a ton of help. Usually, if you're really able to pause for a moment, silence all the noise, and really think about where am I in each of these areas, you can ask yourself that question honestly. You can give yourself an honest assessment, identify what comes to surface for you, and it's going to help you identify what you want to work on and why you're stuck. Because it's great to identify that you're stuck, but what's more important is understanding why you're stuck in that space. And so I often like to tell people, I really love this quote, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And clarity really is the first step to transformation. So you've got to really acknowledge where you are. And what happens when we don't hit the reset button is we just stay stuck in cycles, keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And most of us know that is the definition of insanity. But here's the reality. You are not alone. I myself have been there. I felt overwhelmed before by the weight of responsibilities. I felt stuck in cycles that I just couldn't seem to break. Like every time I thought I was getting ahead, I realized I was caught in that same cycle again. And I always give the example of it's like the hamster wheel. The hamster runs on the wheel all day long, but he really doesn't get anywhere. And sometimes that's how we are in life. We're just running in this circle, almost like we're on a merry-go-round that we can't get off. And when you have so many things on your plate, like we often do, we sometimes confuse busy with important. What really happens, though, is that you can't focus on the one thing that would really move you forward, that one thing that would really make impact, because you're focusing on too many things. So this is why it matters that you take inventory. This is exactly why I developed the Life Audit worksheet, so that you can ask yourself for each category in life where you are, and then begin to ask yourself why. And this is your chance to be radically honest with yourself. Sometimes we avoid checking in with ourselves because we're afraid of what we'll find, but there's power in that knowledge. And so the more you acknowledge, the more you'll take that power back. And I always tell people this is kind of the sacred part of the work, because this is really where the transformation begins. So if you haven't had a chance to do your Life Audit worksheet, you're going to really want to take some time, sit with that worksheet, really identify where you are, and start asking yourself why. So the first part of the worksheet is all about where am I? So where are you? And then the second part is about why are you there? And so I love to talk about the why, because I call it the hidden reasons why you're stuck. Many people think external circumstances keep them stuck. So you're blaming your job. You may be blaming your kids. You may be blaming the neighbor, the environment you're in. I live in a state that has X going on. So you're blaming all of these external factors, when really those are not the things that keep us stuck. Being stuck is really a state of mind. So it's those limiting beliefs that are running on replay in the background of your mind. And so here are some of the beliefs that I believe show up in times of adversity, in times when we're not aligned, in times when we're not being intentional. We get stuck in that fear of change. We get stuck in the guilt and regret phase. We feel guilt over putting ourselves first or doing something that helps us, but maybe it doesn't benefit everyone else. And it's sometimes the belief that if we say no, we will disappoint everyone. So we refuse sometimes to set boundaries. And, one that I don't have here, but one that I've come to have a lot of respect for, sometimes we even believe that we have to earn the right to rest. Like I mentioned earlier, we get stuck in this pattern of busy is important. And so if any of this sounds familiar, this is exactly why I developed this challenge. And I'm really here to help you confront those beliefs and start shifting them, because when you change your beliefs, ultimately you do begin to change your life. It's not just a cliche. So some of the things I like to share when we think about the fear of change. Oftentimes we ask ourselves, what if I fail? We forget to ask ourselves, what if I succeed? And sometimes the fear of success is just as great as the fear of failure. See, I know what happens if it doesn't work out. I've had to dust myself off and get back up again many times, but I don't really know what's on the other side of the door if my plan actually works. If I'm successful, if that business venture that you're trying to launch really goes well, are you prepared? You may be one of those people. Maybe you're balancing full-time job and a business, and you're afraid that your business will do so well that you work yourself out of a job because you're so accustomed to having that job. So sometimes that fear of change, it really paralyzes us, and we don't realize that it's a limiting belief that I'm supposed to be in a 9-to-5 situation, or I'm supposed to be an employee, and we're not ready to make that shift from employee to employer. So that fear of change is really, really paralyzing. And so we have to be mindful of that. The guilt phase, am I being selfish for wanting more? Sometimes we get afraid of the people and places we might outgrow when we really reach for our destiny. And then you even ask yourself sometimes, what about the people I may leave behind? I might outgrow some of those people that I've come to be very fond of. And so we get stuck in this phase of, well, I don't want to do well if I can't bring everyone else along with me. Again, another limiting belief that we all have to do this, instead of realizing there are certain things that we'll do together, but there are things that you're absolutely meant to do and carry on your own. And then the lack of boundaries. Always putting others first and not wanting to be selfish. It's really hard as a woman for some of us, especially because we're nurturers by nature. That's how we were created. but you weren't created to put others before you to the point where it's a disadvantage to you, to the point where it harms you because you don't take good care of yourself. You don't take self-care seriously. You're the last one to get to the doctor when you should be the first one to get to the doctor, because you can't be a good caretaker if you're not well taken care of. And so I often find these types of limiting beliefs to be extremely common among women, especially in the workplace. We have societal norms that we're facing in our homes. They're really, really common. We have, again, societal roles that we're supposed to have in our home. And so all of these expectations that we've internalized, they make you second guess what you really should be doing. And they sometimes make you afraid to reach for more. And so if you're hearing these things, you may be starting to think, maybe I do have some limiting beliefs. In order to really kind of eradicate those beliefs, you have to start asking yourself, where did these beliefs come from? Here's what I tell people. You're not broken. You're not damaged. You're going through life just as everybody else. Your experiences, all those things begin to shape you, and you've got to pay close attention to how they're shaping you so that you can control the narratives. Sometimes there are things that we just adapt because it's a part of who we are. It's a part of, like I said, the environment, the culture you were raised in. But sometimes there are also things like, think about what you see on TV. You know, depending on the generation you're in, you may have come up in an era where most of the roles that women played on TV were supporting roles. So it made you feel like you should always be in a supporting role and that you didn't have permission to lead. Think about your cultural influences that are all around you, whether it's the music you listen to, the TV shows, even in religion. Think about how what you see in the church or in your place of worship shapes what you believe you're supposed to be doing. And now you begin to couple that with your personal experiences, and you begin to see how you've got all of these different influences. And while they may have served you at a point in life, they're just no longer serving you. And some of those things just aren't even true anymore for you. And so I often tell people, sometimes you have to ask yourself, when was the first time, or can you remember a time, you may not remember the first time, but a really impactful time where you felt doubt about your abilities? Maybe somebody, whether intentionally or not, made a comment or a question about something you were about to do, and it made you second guess yourself. For example, you could have told someone, I'm about to apply for a promotion, and they said, oh, why would you do that? And you immediately start second guessing yourself. Or they say, I'm going to apply for this role in X department, and they go, oh, they'd never hire you. And sometimes those are innocent comments, but they begin to set up these boundaries, these blockers, and they really, really begin to truly shape those beliefs and the patterns of what we believe we're entitled to and have access to. And then I often tell people, sometimes some people have gone through traumatic events that begin to shape their beliefs. They believe that because something was always a certain way, it will always be that way. So it's important to notice like where your beliefs come from, identify what's causing them to show up and when they show up strongly for you. Because usually you'll find it's in those high pressure moments, like applying for that promotion or stepping into a leadership position, trying to launch a new business, trying to go back to school. When you're trying to do something monumental for yourself, that high pressure begins to rise. And that's when those beliefs begin to set in on you. So recognizing these moments is the first step towards overcoming them. So I always ask that you take a moment to reflect on some of those limiting beliefs and really identify where they came from and ask yourself, are they even true? So as you're listening to this, feel free to drop in the comments if you've got some limiting beliefs or areas that you felt stuck in that you want to just share that you're going to be working on over the next 3 days. So I'm pausing to allow some comments to come in before we keep moving. I'm checking all of my different platforms to see where our chats and comments may be at. So now that you've seen where you're stuck, it's going to be important that you begin to identify a new path forward to say, I recognize I'm stuck in this area. Maybe again, like I said, it's your career. or maybe it's your education, you want to go back to school, you're going to want to keep that life audit handy so that as we go through the next few days, you can use it to create a vision for the next version of you. Because again, just because it's always been that way, it doesn't have to always continue to be that way. You want to, again, like I said, identify what's that area that you're going to move forward in. And then we're going to start preparing a plan for you to do so. And I often tell people, when I watch people go through the life audit, usually something comes up that they didn't expect. They go, oh, I thought I was really good in the relationship space. Maybe it's that person who's single and they believed they were single by choice. And then they realize they're actually not happy being single. They're okay being single, but they don't really want to be single. They desire companionship. So you'll be able to use that life audit to say, what limiting beliefs may have led me to believe that this was okay and that I was okay in this space, so that you can then say, well, now that I recognize I'm not, how do I create a vision for the future where I want to be? And then we're going to chart your path to get there. And I'm going to be here with you every step of the way. And so I really love this quote. It says, change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous in the end. And that's exactly what the reset is all about. You're going to feel uncomfortable at first because you're saying to yourself, I'm being open and honest to admit I'm not happy with where I am in this place in life. And it's going to get a little uncomfortable during the process, because now you're going to have to confront some things that maybe it's something you learned from a parent or a grandparent. And while they're great people, those things just may not be serving you well anymore, right? And so that's not a bad thing. That's all about growth. But again, that's where you're going to lead to that gorgeous change in the end, because when you finally get to the end and you've crafted your new vision and you begin to build an action plan to get there, and you realize how achievable it is for you to chart your path to become the person that you know you were destined to be and created to be, that's where the excitement kicks in. So before we close, I just want to remind you of this. You're not behind. It doesn't matter where everyone else is in life. Don't compare yourself. I was once told, be careful comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. We're all at different places, but we're at our appointed place at the appointed time, right? So you're not behind, you're not late, and you're not broken. You're just in a moment of becoming. And sometimes becoming requires you to pause. And so today, again, give yourself a hand, because you paused long enough to hear your own inner voice. You showed up for yourself in a space that you may not have normally did it in. And you're giving yourself space to reflect, to be honest, and to finally ask the deeper questions. That's not small work. I consider it sacred work, because it's changing from the inside out. It's a mindset shift. So whatever may have come up for you today during the life audit exercise, whether it felt messy, emotional, or even unclear, just know it is all a part of the process. You're uncovering what's real so you can create what's next. So tonight, I want you to rest comfortably in knowing that clarity is coming. You're on your way to the other side. And tomorrow, we're going to shift into something powerful as we reimagine. So again, if you have any comments, thoughts, questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If, again, you came across this video and you have not officially registered for my reset challenge, no worries. You can always jump in at any time. That's the beauty of it. You get to move at your own pace, and you have a guide on the side. So thank you again for joining me, and have a great night. See you tomorrow.